All right, hello, welcome everyone to DC on RMD, the Superman and Lois edition. All right, so we are back in studio, myself, Michael, David, and Steve, to discuss the 7th episode of Superman and Lois, titled A Regular Guy. So the synopsis: after some concerning interactions in town, Clark is determined to protect the secret that he's Superman, a task complicated by Jonathan and Jordan. Lois considers the future of the Gazette after Chrissy proposes something drastic. All right, so let's just skip right to the ending of the episode, because that's pretty much what the entire episode was building towards, and it's the idea. I wouldn't even say just this episode. I would say let's go back to season 1 when the boys felt miffed that they've been lied to their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that Superman's identity, his secret identity, causes turmoil, complications, problems, what have you, for the people closest to him.
It is the ultimate comic book trope.
Yes, and it's been built in to this show since the very first season. It's kind of gone a little more covert throughout the second season and the third season, and it's come right back to just bite us in the ass for this 4th and final season, because by the end of the episode, the entire world now knows who Superman really is. Now, quickly, let's go around the room. David, starting with you. What are your opinions, thoughts, and feelings on such a massive reveal in a TV show like this, where Superman's identity has always been just a built-in component, the duality of Clark and Superman, or Kal-El?
I said this in the last episode, that basically this show kept surprising me how they would take concepts of Superman that have tried and failed in comic books, but have made it work for their show in spectacular fashion. And in this episode, they take one of the biggest tropes, which is Superman reveals his secret identity to Lois Lane or any of his friends, and, chaos ensues. And it always falls flat in the comics because they'll have to revert back and say, well, the world does not know who Clark Kent is, put his glasses back on. Here, it's done so well. I'm like going, if you're not a Superman fan, or if you are a Superman fan and you're wondering why you're not watching the best Superman storytelling we've seen in a while when it comes to TV and movie, you need to watch Superman and Lois.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? How did you feel about such a massive reveal?
It was poetic because, to your point, we start off the very beginning of the entire show from the first season with this, let's call it a lie, or at least obfuscating the truth. And then this whole episode is him trying to, all these people that have slowly either figured it out or learned of the truth, him trying to get them to unlearn the truth, right? He's doing little things to make them go, I'm not Superman, I'm just a regular guy, right? But then it builds to this moment where he has no choice but to reveal. And because it was so well executed in that diner scene, from an emotional impact perspective, with everybody involved in it, I had no qualms with it. For me, it worked, and I would have never thought you could make something like this work.
And again, he does the one thing that we expect out of Superman. When Lex Luthor tries to do his schemes, Superman finds a way to actually get past it.
Well, and in this case, it wasn't even Lex doing the scheming. It was Candace's weird deadbeat dad. And he could have made a different choice. He could have absolutely used the speed of Superman to take care of that bullet, get rid of the bullet. He could have done any number of things.
Throw him into the sun.
But he just chose to, you know what? It's time. Because I just told my boys all of this stuff about how you have to hide your identity and for these reasons and this and that and the other thing. I think ultimately what it showed was that he learned something in this episode and realized he had to take a different path and admit maybe he was wrong in what he told his sons.
Yeah.
Right. And if you just dig a little deep into Superman's morality, I mean, that is very much a component of who Superman is. It's his moral compass
Truth, justice.
and the American way, or all of that stuff.
I love that
if
stuff.
you go with the Bryan Singer version. So when you have a character who's deeply moral and he is witnessing firsthand what his secret is doing to people, it would feel very much out of character if this type of Superman, or any version of Superman really, were to shrug and say, well, my secret's more important than you, than who you are. Then that wouldn't be Superman. So the fact that they built it into the reveal, the scene between the sons and their schoolmate, showing how the son, or the, what's his name, Tenny? What was that kid's name? Was it Tenny?
I think
Or
it
was
was
it Timmy, was it?
No, I think it was Kenny.
Kenny? No, it is Timmy. Timmy Ryan. Yeah, Timmy
Oh.
Ryan. And you see how dejected and just off-put he was with the lie that Superman himself is lying to him. And then you see what it does to his boys, who obviously have the same moral compass as their father. Well, what lesson are you teaching any of these people?
Right. And
Yes.
then when the reveal happens, and then that mother who, sided with Clark, with Timmy's mother, and then he's sitting there watching it on the news with a smirk like, I told all of you and nobody believed
Believe
me.
me.
You gaslit the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And then his mom's reaction to that of like, you could just tell, I am so sorry I didn't believe you.
Yeah.
Like, that creates a different ripple effect.
And,
Yeah.
and that's why this reveal, which if someone would have asked me, hey, Michael, do you want Superman to throw out his secret identity? I would say no, because I just I've always liked those components to the superhero mythos, specifically as it is connected to Superman, or I should say as it relates to Superman. There we go.
Yeah.
But the way they did it, it makes you feel like, yeah, of course, this is the time. This is when you do it. So it feels organic. It feels natural. It's not contrived, especially since it's been a major narrative component since the first season. So to have this reveal, okay, fine. That's a decision they made. But then how are we going to execute this?
Going
Well,
forward.
no, I'm saying just as if we were the writers. Like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, but how are we going to execute this now to make sure it works as well as it does seemingly work on paper? Well, you bring in the director of this episode, Gregory Smith, who absolutely, along with the actors, just that diner scene was everything it needed to be to sell us this reveal and to show us that, okay, this secret is so important to Superman. It's built into his ideology, his core person. It's what he's been holding. It's a part of him. Well, how are we going to believe that he would be willing to just give it up? Well, in a moment like we were given in the diner. And it was one of the most spectacular, dramatic, emotional scenes in any superhero property I have ever seen in my long life.
And while you're watching it, it's tugging at your own heartstrings as the viewer for so many different reasons. And then there's even a moment where you wonder, is he going to open his shirt, or is he just going to step to the side a few inches and let
catch the
that
ball?
round hit the server behind him?
Oh yeah. Well, Mike,
yeah.
remember a couple shows back you said what you wanted to see
Yeah.
in the show, and you said that you wanted to have the iconic flying in space and basically him smiling
Oh, I
and
still want
waving
that.
at the camera. This is actually kind of one of those scenes that a lot of Superman fans pay to see in any Superman
The reveal.
media. The reveal. This is Tyler's ultimate reveal of he is Superman. And like, I was so happy when every single part of this episode just tied all of the story, the narrative threads that we've had since season 1, where you have that look from Lois to Clark in slow-mo, where she's just smiling at him. She knows what he's going to do. So it doesn't even dawn on her. She trusts him. And when he just opens open the shirts up, I expected to hear the John Williams theme.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was like funny because
That would have sent it over the edge.
After-
I would have died.
after
Right there, I would have died.
after that, so I was cracking up because a fan actually did it on YouTube, where they took the scene and they just put the
That's awesome.
John Williams thing in the background just briefly, and it works perfectly for that moment.
Yeah.
Because that is Superman.
It doesn't even need to come in with like the full orchestra, but just the trumpet or I mean, but I'm not even saying that. Just that the few notes of the trumpet and then fade it out. But the whole episode had really good pacing. But just that diner scene alone was perfectly paced in and of itself. And as you're watching it in slow motion, which a lot of we've seen slow motion how many different ways through Flash and other things, but in this one instance, it worked so well compared to other things we've seen use slow mo. You
know why, Steve? Because it's not about the slow motion. It's not about the moment.
Yes.
It's about the emotion.
The emotion.
That's what they focused on.
And,
That's what they
every
focused
time
on.
they would turn to a new camera angle or a new shot, like with Lois, or all those different shots that they were cutting in with it. It's cool to watch Quicksilver do his thing in the X-Men movies in slow motion. At least the first couple times you see it.
But that's about the spectacle, right?
Exactly. And in this instance, to your point, Mike, it wasn't about the spectacle. It was used in a way to every time it cut to something, it just pulled at those strings even more. There was so much weight to it.
And the thing is that this is like those. It's so hilarious to me that basically throughout this entire season we've been talking about how the writing staff and this team of the show really knows how to portray Superman.
Or make you cry.
This is the one scene where I'm like going, this is a true Superman scene. This is better than him, fighting out there with Doomsday in space.
100%.
David, you know what? This, to me, that's a good point, David. This is one of the best Superman moments we've ever been given, period. In fact, I would put it up there with the Superman kneeling before Zod moment, where he stands, squeezes General Zod's hand, and throws him into the
Phantom Zone.
Yeah, the Fortress of Solitude, icy abyss. Like, to me, that is comparable. Like, those two scenes side by side are equally emotional.
Oh yeah,
for the exact same reasons in a lot of ways.
Because I think a lot of fans have to understand there's more to being a super. The reason why Superman's so great isn't because he has super strength and invulnerability. Yeah. All the superpowers are great. It's the character of Clark that makes Superman.
You're right. Because look at the scene that led into the reveal. Clark, as a regular person, willingly buying a house for Kyle and Chrissy. That's a heroic thing. Two people who need help, and yet Clark, not Superman, is willing to give something to them. So what we're seeing before we get that reveal is that it's not about Superman is not the hero. It is him.
It's Clark.
It's Clark.
Him. He embodies it all. And that's why this episode and this show continues to amaze us, because it's the little things that they do that clues all of us in. And we realize these people aren't just good writers. These people also understand the character, because even with the duality thing, my biggest problem with the potential of this Superman reveal is that it kind of destroys a major part of who Superman is, which is the duality.
Yeah.
Clark and Superman. But they still held on to that duality, because when Superman sat down to do the interview with Olsen, it was very clearly defined that he is still, the duality is still there.
Yeah.
I'm a regular guy, and I'm Superman. And because they had that line, it again clues us Superman nerds And we're like, yeah, they understand the vital components that characterize Superman.
But do you really think that her equity stake in half the Gazette was worth $200,000?
But the thing is, you got to figure that Lex must be crazy if he's going to do something. He's going to try to screw with Smallville that way.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if I'm Clark and Lois, 200 G's.
I mean, listen, I know Kyle, not to put anybody's financial situation.
He's a fireman, Mike. He's a fireman.
Dude, come on. You can't afford a $300,000 home? Like, I mean, that's not that much money in today's world. I mean, that's barely.
But we're talking Smallville money, and that's what I'm saying. The Gazette can't be making that much capital. Now, granted, they were using a little bit of Ma Kent's money. It sounded like that.
Yes.
It was her. No, it was her dad's. It was her dad's.
It was Sam Lane's.
Sam Lane's money.
Yeah.
But either way, like, did they move into a shitty little apartment together? Did they both still have their own shitty little apartments? They couldn't get like a better, shittier, bigger apartment.
What about living within your means, Kyle?
Right.
I mean, listen, you impregnated a woman.
Be responsible, Kyle.
Yeah.
But remember, guys, these guys are human. They're not Superman. They don't know how to make good decisions.
I know Roe v. Wade has been overturned, Kyle, but you can still find,
He's a fireman. You just have the baby and dump it off at the firehouse.
Hey, guys, look what I found.
It's my baby. I'm leaving it here.
Kyle, isn't that your baby? No. I just found it.
I've never seen this baby before in my life.
I found it between Chrissy's legs. I'm really not quite sure how it ended up there.
It wasn't me.
I will say that Kyle finally this season isn't a complete dumbass.
No. And he stood up for Clark in that moment in the diner.
Yeah, he did.
Like,
this is the first season where you don't want to just throw darts at his face. You're like, okay, you finally might have learned your lesson. However, whatever lesson he has learned in between seasons, my God, he has aged.
Yes.
What happened? Poor dude.
Well, dude, he lost Lana.
Yeah.
That's enough to age anyone, right?
But she even looks rough, but she also got thrown around a little bit by that, by Otis or whatever the guy's name was.
I wonder in reality how many years actually went by in between season 3 and season 4. Like, we know there was a longer break than normal because of the strike, and also because the whole CW and becoming its own entity also slowed things down. And then we also know that when they shoot season 3 or when they shot season 3, obviously there's several months, if not a year, prior to its release.
Yeah.
So I gotta think a lot of time passed because Kyle looks like he's aged at least 5 years.
But maybe they're intentionally doing that with hair and makeup to make him look like he's just, he's gone through the ringer, right?
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
He's gotten divorced. He even said it. He's got one kid going off to college soon. He's got another kid that, he's still got to pay alimony for. Now he's got a third kid on the way. They live in a podunk apartment. He's selling his grill.
He's selling the grill.
He's selling the grill. Now, that grill looked like a Walmart special, but who am I to judge on someone's grill?
But it just shows you how basic he is because you think you're going to get a down payment
with a grill.
With a grill.
With a grill.
Like, how much money are you really going to get out of a grill?
Unless that thing was like, what are those
made out of gold?
Unless it's like a Grill Master at $27,000. Like, it's not worth anything, really.
Well, there are those ones expensive grills, but I can't remember the name.
But that wasn't an expensive grill.
No, that was a Walmart special, or maybe like a Lowe's special. They have them chained out front of Lowe's.
That was the CW art department saying, well, we can't afford a real grill, guys, for this scene, so I'm just going to pull one from my backyard.
And it'll work because it's Kyle.
That we bought for spring break. And
let's put it this way. It's not a Viking, and those run about 13 Gs.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's not a Viking, and it wasn't one of those ones that are automatic where you put in the wood chips and you turn the button and then everything just magically, smokes itself or whatever. No, this was just a normal grill.
So what did we think about Jimmy Olsen?
That is the one that basically I really like because the way they tied it in, the way they made the character now important to the narrative, because that was the important thing. Everybody was like saying, well, they're missing, the Perry Whites, the Jimmy Olsen characters. But the thing is, if the narrative calls for a character like that to come in, then the writers have shown, then we'll use them.
Yeah.
We're not going to do a fan service thing where, oh, this guy just shows up randomly and never, doesn't do anything for the story. Using Jimmy Olsen, I thought, was genius, because now we understand not only why Jimmy Olsen's not around is because there were two friends that fell out.
They were on the outs. Yeah,
they were on the outs with each other.
They were on the outs, and they were also just quote unquote work friends.
And then, like, at the end of the day, tying it into the whole reason why Clark is actually breaking out his identity, so that basically more people can understand this is why these things are happening.
These aren't personal things.
It's not personal.
But isn't that, David, the reason why we're okay with a one and done episode with Jimmy Olsen? Because even though it's one and done and it's in the final season, now it may not be one and done. We may see him again.
Well, they're best buds now.
But my point is that there could be people that would complain, say, well, you bring up Jimmy Olsen in, it feels like lip service, last minute. But it really isn't lip service, because they brought in a character who's very important to the Superman mythos.
Exactly.
And they didn't just bring him in as, hey, guys, last minute, how you doing? I'm Jimmy Olsen. They used him in a way that absolutely fleshed out and help us make sense.
Why he wasn't there the whole
Right.
time.
And
Yeah.
Exactly. They justified why he hasn't been around. And also, they used him to, I guess, create the urgency or the understanding via the audience why Superman finally feels like he should reveal his identity. Because it's not just about the immediate, it's also looking back at the past. Look what it's done. It destroyed a relationship with someone that he actually really did care for.
The lies have cost him a lot. And actually, it doesn't have to be a one and done, because once Lex gets this suit, talk about an ultimate weight, is if he dies at the hands of Lex in some way.
Yeah.
Then you have had this whole lifetime of not having a friend that you just recently got back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a way to play that
Yeah.
could have huge emotional weight.
Yeah, it could definitely work. But even if we don't see him again, I feel like a lot of us Superman fans are okay with it, because even though it's just one appearance or one major story,
It's how it was handled.
it's the way it was handled. It mattered to who? Superman, who is, for all, the show is Superman and Lois. So if you're going to bring characters in, they're always going to have to be, at the end of the day, they're going to have to be used as a reflection, a refracted mirror of sorts, so we can understand our core characters, or they're going to have their actions have to have major consequences for the narrative that directly relates to those characters. And that's exactly what they did with Jimmy Olsen. Now, just looking back in general at Superman at large, this season, I was going to wait to say this to the end, but I think we're getting to the point now where we can definitely see how this series is shaping up. I think a lot of us had some worries that having a shortened season, having less characters, that the show would feel different from the prior seasons. And it does feel slightly different, but not in tone, just in how concise the storytelling has been. The lack of budget and the episode count being cut nearly in half actually helped the overall quality, because now you're getting rid of the excess. We don't need to have long, drawn-out stories of Sarah getting into car accidents and feeling
Exactly.
existential and not really finding herself. And those stories are fine, and they work just great in the show. But I think a lot of us can also understand and agree that it's also kind of unneeded in a Superman story, and that those stories are there simply as filler to fill in those episode counts that the story doesn't necessarily have time to do with Superman-eccentric narratives. So now we have a season, 10 episodes in length, and everything just feels so perfect and concise. And the characters that are used, Sarah, Lana, John Irons, Nat, even Lex Luthor, all the Jimmy Olsen, Chrissy, Kyle, they're only being used when it matters to Superman and Lois.
Because why, Mike? They're called the supporting cast.
Oh, yes. And that's not, me talking shit about the prior seasons. I think everyone knows by this point, Dave and Steve, that we absolutely are huge fans of those first 3 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
But this season is on a whole other level.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's saying something, because I would grade the first 3 seasons all 95, 97%.
Yeah, but this one is just so much tighter because it has to be.
Yeah.
And refresh my memory. Did the season get cut in half because that's what the CW decided, or was it just because
Licensing was too high?
Licensing, yeah.
Warner's wanted a ridiculous amount for the license, and the CW just doesn't have the money. At least they say they didn't have the money, so they...
Warner's is hurting too, so they need the money. So
You need that money.
Yeah, but Warner's doesn't know how to remove their head from their ass.
Yes.
No, they do not.
In fact, that's something you and I were talking about, Steve, prior to our recording. Do we really even need or want James Gunn at this point?
Fact check, no.
Dude,
Because-
I feel sorry for James Gunn.
Because, okay, we have 2 of the best DC shows of all time, in my opinion,
On
running
right now.
parallel.
Yes.
I watch The Penguin, and I feel disturbed. And then I watch Superman. I feel emotionally drained. It's a beautiful night, a wonderful experience. I have difficulty sleeping, but the entertainment is top notch.
Oh,
The
yeah.
writing is great. So when you look at what we're being given, that has nothing. All these things have nothing to do with James Gunn. James Gunn's hand is nowhere on the Penguin, nowhere on Superman and Lois. And it makes you scratch your head and wonder, do we really need James Gunn? Because all he's doing is coming in and like pushing things away. Like,
Yeah.
do we need that?
No, we
No.
don't need it, and we don't want it. Nobody in their right mind should want it, because after what you just said, I feel filled up.
Yeah.
My heart feels filled, and I know when Gunn's thing comes along, I just have this sneaking suspicion that all that life will be drained right out of me,
Oh, wow.
Well, see, the problem...
like kryptonite.
The problem is, I mean, we all understand...
Like Solar Man scraping you.
scraping you, but like, we all understand why James Gunn is here, because he has to bring in the mass audience. That is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because mass audiences is what all those big conglomerates are chasing after nowadays, especially Warner Brothers. And while we're getting these great series, because I honestly think this is the 2 series that you're bringing up, probably the 2 best series we've seen out of DC the last.
Ever.
I would say ever.
Yeah, I was gonna actually be
Except-
nice and say 5 years, 10 years.
This is the best thing we've seen. These 2 franchises are the best we've seen since Batman the Animated Series, and
Okay.
maybe Batman Beyond.
The only series that I can think of that
I
I've-
would agree with
that
that.
I would that I've truly enjoyed and would put this into echelon is like Doom Patrol. I would put, but again,
fun.
Oh, man. You're...
but
And Titans fun.
Titans,
Swamp Thing
Swamp
was
Thing,
amazing,
fun. but not
Not
at this
this.
level.
Yeah.
These 2 series are definitely shoulders above those. But
and also, David, because that is a good point. Doom Patrol is one of those shows that are on a whole other level.
Yeah.
Just amazing writing, very human stories, but massive tentpole IPs.
yes,
The Batman world and the Superman world.
And-
Like these are the epitome of that.
Mhm.
And if you look at it just as that, not talking about Doom Patrol, that's a very obscure IP, then I would have to agree with Steve. Like
Yeah.
these are the 2 shows that we have currently running right now are the best DC shows we have ever been given. I would even say they challenge some of the films that have been made.
oh yeah.
100%.
But that's why I say is the only reason now after watching these 2, I'm like going. That's why I say I feel sorry for James Gunn,
Yeah.
because I understand why you're being brought in. You got to bring in the mass numbers. Okay, you might bring in the mass numbers, but if you cannot live up to this expectations, this bar that these 2 series made, people like me who are fans that have watched these series are going to look at your Superman as a joke.
Yeah.
But did his Suicide Squad live up to the expectations that the executive brass had? And if it did, or even if it didn't, will what he's about to do live up to what we could probably assume are grossly awful over expectations?
Yeah. Because, like, I'm sorry, I can't even remember who the actor's name is that's playing Superman for James Gunn, but he's not going to be better than Tyler at this point.
David, you're right. And you know why, Dave? Because when did Superman come out? 77? Christopher Reeves's
The first one?
Yeah, the Superman the motion picture.
79.
Okay, so David,
David, is it 79?
let's just say 79 for the sake of argument. Okay, so 40, let's just say 40 plus years, okay, since we've had Christopher Reeves's first inaugural Superman run.
Yeah.
40 plus years. In 40 plus years, David, it's taken 40 plus years for us to have another Superman that we can say this guy is comparable to Reeves, if not maybe slightly better. And that's saying something. I know that's blasphemy.
He's
but
better than, I hate to say this, he's better than Cavill.
Oh, yeah. And that's not saying anything about Cavill. I love Henry Cavill.
Yeah, I love Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman, but
just everything. And we should also be fair and say the writing has everything to do with it, and the directing has everything to do with it. I mean, a performer can only do so much. They have to have the writing and they have to have the directing. And fortunately for Tyler, he has all of that to help with this legacy that this will always forever follow him now.
yeah.
He will always be this Superman. And it's going to be really hard for Tyler to find a job that's going to match this level. It really is. I feel sorry for him and the actor playing Lois, because these types of roles only come once in a lifetime.
If you're lucky.
Oh, yeah.
If you're lucky. It's 78, by the way. So we're
Okay.
But David Cordsweet, that's the other actor that basically I was trying to remember who's playing. That's the
new
actor,
Superman.
the new Superman.
And he
I'm like,
looks good.
He looks great.
Listen, you know what? I don't think any of us actually think James Gunn's Superman movie is going to suck. I don't think it's going to suck. But after, oh really? You guys, we haven't really talked about it in depth.
No.
So you think it's going to suck?
I think he's going to look good as Superman and or Clark as an actor.
But the film itself is going to
Not
really.
Yeah.
do it justice.
Yeah.
Because there's too many cooks in the pot, so to speak, because you're putting too much emphasis on other characters that really, is great.
Yeah.
Let's have Guy Gardner show up. Let's have Mr. Terrific show up.
Unfortunately, that's what James Gunn writes. He writes ensemble pieces.
He writes ensemble
He has
pieces.
never done a film ever.
And I'm sure
with just one character.
Everyone keeps throwing it in my face. The video, look what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, David. I'm like, okay, fine. He did great with Guardians.
But James has a crude style to him, a crude sense of humor that has worked and found its...
That's not Superman.
You're dealing with Superman.
It's weaseled its way into all of James Gunn's work, all of it.
Agreed.
And Superman does not fit with James Gunn's propensity towards crude humor, crude behavior, crude narratives. It's a very different world that James Gunn writes.
Unfortunately, there's ideals of Superman that do not fit in certain writers' spectrum.
You know who? And this just literally occurred to me as Mike was describing that. You know, it's shocking that we never saw over the years that probably could have done a pretty incredible take on Superman as a film. Fucking Spielberg.
Oh yeah.
Like
Spielberg,
of all the people who's gonna make something that have heart.
Yeah.
It's Spielberg.
It's Spielberg, or like
he has that Spielbergian style is doused in optimism. It's very
hope.
It's quote unquote kiddie friendly.
Yeah.
Because like that's the thing about
Steve, that's a That's a good pick. I've never even, and that's kind of like a no-brainer. It kind of makes sense.
And
when you think about it, it's like, why did this never happen in all of these years?
I'm sure Gunn's gonna do his damnedest to prove us wrong, because I've seen him in interviews saying that he's tired of filmmakers questioning his style of filmmaking, but it's like we all have our genres that we play in.
Yeah, James Gunn. It's the same thing with Quentin Tarantino trying his hand at one point. That rumor, not a rumor, it was confirmed for quite a while, that Tarantino was going to do a Star Trek.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, what?
And it's not going to work.
Yeah, and we all thought, okay, it might be cool,
No.
but will that actually be Star Trek then? If
Exactly.
Tarantino is making a rated R version of Star Trek, I feel like certain directors, no matter how great they are, they have their sandbox. And the Superman sandbox is very different than the James Gunn
Absolutely.
sandbox.
And,
so
I mean-
that brings us back to this show, because that's what I was trying to get us
Yeah.
back to. So because we know that this show has been canceled prematurely due to James Gunn's Superman, if that movie sucks and this show is canceled to make room for Gunn's Superman, I'm fucking done. His move, if Superman and Lois was canceled, which not if, it was canceled for James Gunn's movie, then that fucking movie better move mountains.
Yes.
Good,
It
because
won't.
if it doesn't, there's going to be fucking outrage, dude.
That's why I'm worried about the movie though, Mike, because the more that we get into this series, that mountain gets bigger and bigger and bigger for the movie that's supposed to come out. And maybe that's the strategy, is like Warner Brothers is hoping that, well, no one's paid attention to our series, so no one's going to make a big fuss if we lay a turd right after it. So, so maybe that's what their idea is.
we may not,
knows?
David, we may not be paying attention to the turd, but we're going to smell it.
We're gonna smell it.
So is Gunn, he's doing Superman, and is he doing Brave and the Bold?
Yeah, he's doing Brave and the Bold.
And
So-
is he doing anything else?
He's got to follow up. He's going to be doing Creature Commandos.
So he's doing all of it.
He's doing all of it. So he's
well,
got
him personally. He's not directing Brave and the Bold, is he?
I th-
No.
don't think he's
producing
directing.
it.
The
He's
guy-
producing.
Yeah. Well, yes, everything that's part of the DCU, the new universe they're building
He's
out.
the producer.
He is the Fahey
Yeah.
of
Okay,
DC.
okay.
And I'm sorry, like he's going to be looked, especially after Penguin. Matt Reeves is like giving him the middle finger and basically saying like, hey, when your Batman comes out, they're going to be actually comparing it to my Batman's world.
They will, and it's not going to fall. And I was just thinking about this, when you're talking about Tarantino, this is akin having Gunn do some of these things and run it. Like, fuck it, let's just have Eli Roth do Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Why not?
Dude, that'd be fucking weird, dude.
That's my point. Why not? Because nothing matters anymore, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. So I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, David, to your point. Now we understand. 'Cause I don't want to ignore your point, Dave, that you made. Like James Gunn is being brought in to make a mainstream Superman film, and that's fine. And the mainstream will not have Superman and Lois to compare to the movie.
Yes.
But one thing that's been made perfectly clear now, I think, to most studios and executives, is that their IPs will not succeed without the support of the rabid bulk fan base. It just won't. It's been proven. You can make a great movie, but or I should say, a great movie based on a geek property. But if the geeks don't love it,
You're fucked.
overall, it's
You're
going to
screwed.
fail.
Yeah.
Because you need all the ancillary things to make movies successful. Now, if this is the old days where you could release a movie and make, 90 million without even blinking, then okay, the fans don't matter. But the fans matter a lot more today than they did in years past.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And like if James Gunn is expecting to just blow the doors off day one with Superman, and people look at him and they will watch his story, and it's basically, let's say it scores at 80. That 80 compared to Superman and Lois is 90.
Well,
Yeah.
but here's the problem. It kind of to Mike's point about mainstream. I don't know too many people outside of like our circle of people that are like us. I don't know anybody that are casual or even big fans of Superman, that even know this show exists.
Yeah.
That I would call mainstream watchers.
And that's the problem that I understand. That's why I said I understand WB's rationale.
You mean
is because,
CW.
or CW's rationale is like
WB has been defunct for
They're-
about 20 years, Dave.
they're wanting to get the mass audience,
Yeah.
but unfortunately they're just not. So
They're
they
not.
have to, and it's up to. But then again, it goes to like what Mike says. It's up to us rabid fans to tell people you need to be watching.
And I
this
have been.
shit.
I literally told somebody last night who's a Superman fan. I was like, "You should be watching this. Trust me." And I tried to explain the premise. He's like, "I don't want to see Superman and his family." I go, "On paper, I know it sounds weird, but you got to trust me on this. It's the best Superman you got ever." And what's interesting is because it's not mainstream, because not a lot of people are watching it that we would need for it to be successful like it should be. The only thing people are going to have to compare it against when they do go and watch Gunn's Superman is going to be Man of Steel. That's what's going to be the most salient thing of recent memory for most people.
Yeah,
This is what a recent, I should say a friend of mine, not a recent friend, a friend of mine wrote right after the episode. Okay. And this really captures, and he's a big DC fan, but he's one of those level-headed. He's like us. He's level-headed. He isn't an uber nerd that can't see past his own wants. He wrote this about the latest episode. This week's episode of Superman and Lois was not only maybe the best episode of the series, but it was the absolute best content to and for the character in live action in many, many years. For the first time in a really long time, someone understands the character and will not compromise, this is the key part, his moral compass for today's audience.
Bravo.
I've said it before, and I'll continue to declare it. Tyler is the best Superman since Christopher Reeves. An annoyance for me is when folks today label the character boring. Hardly. Issue is he is hard to write for, and too many try to adapt and change him for modern times. There's no need for that when you understand
Yes.
who he is and what he stands for and represents.
yeah,
The best of people that people can be the best of people. This guy doesn't write very well. The best of people, the people can be pure and good, and the writers here fully understand the Man of Steel.
yeah.
I don't always go to Facebook and quote the post my friends make, but this was spot on.
I agree.
Yeah. It's
Because isn't that what we always talk about? Like talking about Man of Steel for a second, or we were talking about Man of Steel, Henry Cavill. The problem wasn't Cavill. The fact that in the very first movie, you have him compromise his morality.
mm-hmm.
The very first movie, not like this build-up towards the third film.
And having to make a hard choice. He did it at the end of the first one.
Yes.
Right. I get what these directors are thinking, but by trying to mold a character like Superman to fit within for modern audiences,
Got to be timeless.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it just you can't do that because if you try to change it to fit the time, then it's not the same character.
Yep.
And this series has found a way to make, I guess you could just call an old-fashioned ideology still resonate with today's audiences.
Yeah. And that's the thing is it goes to even like what me and you have discussed on many of our Superman other projects about comic book writing. Writers do not understand how to they've always told me Superman's too hard to write for because you can't change him. And to me, that's always basically the saddest excuse because if you can't, so what if you can't change a character? Write a story about them.
Well, look at the thematics of this specific episode, okay? So you can depart from tradition. You know, the episode absolutely breaks from the classic Superman tropes by removing the secret identity.
Yes.
But it's still not destroying the character. By choosing openness, this version of Superman embraces vulnerability and ultimately showcases a unique take on his humanity that still fits within the Superman mythos that we've all grown up knowing of this character.
He's the most powerful man known on Earth. And in that moment has to show the most extreme emotional vulnerability.
Yes. That's something that probably Superman Returns comes pretty close to capturing the human components of Superman.
Yeah.
But that's what this reveal does in this episode. It reshapes the Superman story by emphasizing the emotional cost of being both a superhero and a family man. And it reflects a more grounded and character-driven narrative that centers around Clark's maturity and priorities, which is his family. So you can mess with tradition and still adhere to the thematics of Superman.
And when you do it, you get moments like this for actors like Tyler, because we've always been wanting Tyler Hoechlin to have that Superman moments. Like throughout the seasons that we've covered is like, well, we're watching his performance to make sure that basically Tyler gives us the best Superman he can. And in this episode, I think this is his perfect. This is like for Dragon Ball Z fans, this is his perfect form.
Yeah.
This is basically Tyler's perfect performance as Superman in one episode.
David, that's why I said this scene, the scene in the diner, is right up there with the Christopher Reeve General Zod moment. It really is. This is Tyler's defining moment as Superman. That's what this episode did with that diner.
Yeah. And now you're, and unfortunately, I'm going to look at this and say, so you expect me to all of a sudden leave this, and then David Cornsweet's going to come in and just rip open his shirt and basically reveal he's Superman, and we're going to be cool with it.
Listen,
good luck.
I hope.
Good luck.
I really hope. I'm not a hater. I want things to be good. I really hope James Gunn's Superman film brings the feels, brings the emotion, captures everything that Superman is. I hope. But the fact that no director has been able to do that since Richard Donner.
Yeah.
Maybe Bryan Singer with Returns. But also I would say Bryan Singer is a damn good director. But,
he's a good director.
But he also built on what Donner had already set up. So Superman Returns is essentially a third film in a lot of ways, in Richard Donner's own little films. In fact, doesn't it take place after Superman 2? So it's really it's really the third of a trilogy. So even though Bryan Singer, you can point to him and say, well, that's a director that really did capture Superman. The movie itself wasn't great, but the Superman that he gave us was pretty spot on. But also he cheated a bit by relying on Christopher Reeves and Donner's vision.
Yeah.
Whereas Helbing created his own Superman. You know, so we'll see what happens. Now, bringing it to Lex Luthor just for a moment before we close out, what's going to be the potential fallout and the future conflict now? With Superman's identity now public, antagonists like Lex Luthor may exploit this knowledge.
Oh,
maybe, but he now doesn't have leverage. This whole time he's had leverage, and for whatever reason he didn't use it.
Yeah.
And now it's public domain information.
Well,
so
he wanted to destroy Superman, right?
But now,
but it backfired.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing is like, I think that's what's the interesting. That's the interesting kind of dynamic you have with Lex and Superman right now is like, now we're getting into that nitty gritty where Lex is trying to thwart him, but now we're getting to see Tyler as Superman being Superman and actually thwarting Luthor with all of his schemes now, because Luthor can try to defeat Superman with all of this anger and hate, but Superman is going to actually battle him with this what Superman embodies, empathy and basically understanding and all this wholesomeness. So we're seeing like that dynamic where it's not, to me, like a physical dynamic where it's a fist fight, much like last episode where they're fighting in the streets. Now it's more of like an idyllic battle
and an emotional battle. But he thought he could, get one over on him.
and he's not.
And
Well,
he's not.
that's what is
Yes.
awesome, is because Tyler is proving, or Clark is now proving, he's Superman.
Well, okay, so you have Lex, who was obviously trying to undermine Superman and destroy his circle, and he wanted to take the people that were closest to Superman and Lois and make them look at them the way people look at Lex. That was the
Yes.
whole point. What Superman essentially did, and this is why it's so beautiful, because now Lex Luthor's plan won't work, because you saw what the secret identity was doing. Timmy was the perfect embodiment of that. But now you had Clark tell the world that he never used his superpowers for his own advantage. Now, Lex could have pointed and say, look at this man hiding amongst us. What is he doing with these powers? He's abusing it. But now that Clark, it's clear to the world that Clark has not used his powers for his own gain, because he lives in bumfuck Smallville on a farm.
A shitty farmhouse.
The whole world knows that he hasn't. He's lived a very mediocre life
And
as a very normal person who doesn't have wealth, who actually has to pay bills. You know, his wife has to work.
And
When the
thing is-
world sees that this massive person who can literally do anything lives on a farm, Lex's plan will no longer work.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing too is, like, you're seeing, like, the people of Smallville rally around Superman. It goes to, like, what we said in the last episode, where we're seeing, you know, instead of shunning Superman, Smallville's actually kind of come out, and all these people are actually backing him up.
Yeah.
They're doing their small town, you know.
It's extended family. It's
Extended family
community.
thing.
It's community.
It's
And
kind of
when-
what we talked about last episode, right?
Yeah, when you have, like, people all around him talking about how he was raised by Martha Kent, and Martha Kent was like the matriarch of the town and took care of everybody, and suddenly everyone's like going, well, it makes sense now why Superman is the way he is. It's because of his mom. It's because of his parents. They raised him to be that good person.
You know, if I'm Lex, I'm going to call into question where they got this money for this buyout of the Gazette half.
A lot of
And I'm
diamonds
gonna-
getting crushed by
Yeah,
their son.
I think he's been robbing banks. 'Cause a guy on a farm is not going to be able to afford buying.
I think
that
that's
out.
why I'm even more excited for the next episode, because the next episode, I was looking at the title. It's a sharp dressed man. And I'm like going, oh, it's
suit.
Lex.
It's the suit. It's got to be the suit.
Well,
yeah,
that-
this is Lex's retort to, oh, okay, you want to thwart me? Oh, I'm just going to come and make your life a living
Yep.
hell now.
Well, this episode is obviously the calm before the storm.
Yes.
We only have 3 episodes left, and I think we can all agree that it has to be balls to the wall. It has to be Lex,
Oh, it has
eccentric, and of course Brainiac.
Well,
When does Brainiac
God,
enter,
dude.
though? Does he
You only
enter?
have three episodes
oh
left.
man,
Yeah.
they could have thrown us a curveball.
I need that $150.
Now, if you look at the action sequences they did show in the last episode, they're being smart and frugal, because everything they showed us, we've seen throughout the seasons. Those scenes were not new.
Yeah.
Those are all scenes that we have been privy to since the very first season. So they're sitting on a budget right now. They're sitting on a mound of cash. They haven't used it. They have relied solely on creative visual effects, creative writing, and drama, and narrative, character development, character study. That's what they've been relying on, not budget. So that means they have enough money that they've saved to theoretically give us some pretty great action sequences by the end.
Well,
yeah.
we've gotten a handful of good doomsday
Yeah, off and on.
stuff.
Yeah. But
Um,
but even in the first, if you look at the first episode, which was pretty much the whole fight of Doomsday and Superman, was spaced out creatively
yeah.
throughout the entire episode. Because if you were to piece all those scenes together, that's maybe 8, maybe 9 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
So, but that's again showing how great the line producer is. That those
Oh
are
my
the
God,
people
yeah.
that do the budgeting and scheduling, because they found ways to make us think that it's way more than it actually
than
is.
it actually has. And that's why I normally I'd be really hesitant, but at this point I'm like going, I'm gung ho. I'm 100% sure they will come up with a really great ending
Yeah.
for the show.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I'm willing to say I'm going to be $150 richer.
Oh, I forgot about that, and I also forgot about the requirements. What were they? Do you remember? Because I don't.
It had to be hologram Clark coming into play.
That's right.
Because they're going to take that, turn that into
David
Brainiac.
Memorized it.
Turn that
I
into
want that
Brainiac.
money.
Then Lex has to die, and then Brainiac takes over.
Oh, that's right. They have the Lex suit. No, Lex doesn't
Lex
have to
suit.
die. I'll be fair. It wasn't Lex dying. It was the Lex suit having some part
Yeah,
to play.
We got 3 episodes to make that.
they can do it.
trifecta
They can do
happen.
it. They can do it.
Okay, you know what?
And Doomsday
I
has
think
to
we're
show
gonna-
up.
We're gonna have our first big. Oh, that's right, David. Doomsday has to show up
Doomsday
too.
has to show up.
And
Okay,
save the
so in order
Mm-hmm.
for the Brainiac thing not to feel shoehorned in, there needs to be a big clue or hint that we will see him by the end of this upcoming episode. It has. I'm not saying we're going to see him. I'm not saying we're going to hear
Brainiac.
but we need to all know, if you're in the know, we have to realize that by the end of the episode coming up, that we're like, oh shit, this absolutely means Brainiac.
Brainiac
It
is
will
here.
be coming in next. Because they don't have much time. I mean, okay, so 42 minutes roughly with commercials.
Yes.
So you have, what is that? You have a little over 2 hours and 15 minutes roughly
Yeah.
left. That's a movie.
That's a movie.
They
so
have
they
time.
can do it.
They can do it.
They can do it.
Yep.
You're gonna have to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes of that wrapping up with an emotional
That's right.
bookend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry.
So
They can
take
do
that
it.
away and give us, okay, so that leaves us with,
2-ish hours.
yeah, roughly. That's still enough, but there has to be a big push in this next episode towards that.
Oof. Yeah. It's a lot of ground to cover in 3 episodes.
It is, but you know what?
They
I have
fully-
They can do
confidence.
it.
I don't.
I have confidence in this team now.
But that scares me because I have never had this type of confidence ever.
in life.
With
Mike,
okay, I'll go with that.
Mike, just think of Tyler opening up the shirt and basically feeling okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be okay.
Good.
All right, so I mean we've said it all. I'm giving this episode. It shouldn't be a surprise.
Are you gonna do it?
It's 100.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
dude.
go.
God damn it. Me too. Me too.
It is 100.
Yep.
I'm with you there. It's 100 also
100.
because
This is the first. All
It's-
3 of us.
It's 100.
because it gave us the one thing we've been waiting for like years now, actually, as Superman fans, to actually have a true, honest to God Superman moment. And he didn't even throw a punch.
And I didn't want to when I text Mike, after I watched it and just said, dude, the diner scene, like literally in that moment, I wanted to follow up with 100. And I'm like, I'm not going to taint his view.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything further. But the whole last, day, I just been, it's 100. It's 100.
yeah.
And I encourage people to go on YouTube, find that one. I don't know what I forgot what his username is, but he took that scene and put the John Williams some music
I'm gonna
to
go
it.
look for that.
And it's like, oh my God, it fit perfect.
But also, the Superman Lois theme is pretty fucking great too.
It
like
is.
it's great. At
It
first, it was like I think it's natural for all of us to want that John Williams
Yeah.
theme. It's just built in to Superman fans. But over the last 4 years, the Superman and Lois theme has really grown on me to where it's emotional and it works. And if you realize they use it throughout almost
Oh, they do.
every dramatic moment, they go dun 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 dun, and they do variations and it works.
Yes.
So I don't know. I would like to have the John Williams moment, but more than anything, Dave, and this is not typical of me. I'm usually not a nostalgic nerd. In fact, I usually poo-poo on Easter eggs and nostalgia because I think they're the bane of television. But I would love for the series to end with a throwback or callback, an homage to Christopher Reeves, and Tyler flies around the earth
Just waves
and
at the
he
camera.
looks at the camera and smiles.
or winks.
just something that is a callback to Christopher Reeves and how he ended all 4 of his movies that way.
Now, just
believe.
Even Brandon Routh did
That's
it, you
right.
know?
just to actually give us
Yes.
hope, even extra hope for this, because this is something that I think we don't talk a lot about, but the directors of choice for each episode. The interesting thing to me this season, Gregory Smith has been the guy at the helm whenever there's an episode that is like a major influence, and it's usually the ones that we like.
Oh, really?
Because-
Gregory Smith is the one that's been directing the
Yeah,
great episodes?
Gregory episode. He started us off with the end and the beginning in the beginning of this season. That was a really good episode to start off with. Then he was at The Perfectly Good Wedding. That was episode 4. Then he came back for this episode for The Regular Guy. And then the last episode that he's doing is It Went By So Fast, which is the last one, episode 10.
So you know it's going to be good.
So you know that he knows what he's doing with his episodes.
Oh, you're right. He is directing the last episode.
Yes.
Okay.
So, just to give us more hope, hey, get me that $150, Gregory Smith.
What a greedy bastard. All right. We got to end. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.